To learn English is to enjoy and experience a language that opens up opportunities across the world. Together with teachers and our partners, we're here to engage and inspire millions of people throughout their entire learning journey, helping them to confidently prove their skills to the world. As part of a university with a global reputation for academic excellence, we create insights derived from research and our expertise. Combining all of this ensures our unique approach meets the real-life needs of learners through inclusive and accessible products and services. Including the many of us who have been learners and teachers of English, we all care about the impact our work has in the classroom and beyond. By listening, collaborating, and partnering with our entire community, we enable teachers to do what they do best, teach, and learners to reach their full potential. English unlocks a lifetime of experiences, and because language is at the heart of being human, we help people everywhere connect, communicate, and come closer together. Cambridge is where your world grows.
Hello, Sarah. Welcome to Mexico.
Hello, it's great to be here.
I know, and we have very nice people already here. So welcome, everyone. We're going to start right away. So we're just going to introduce ourselves. I'm very happy to have my wonderful colleague, Sarah Ellis, with me today. Sarah, you are in Italy.
Yes, no, I am. I'm in the assessment services team and I'm actually based in Italy. So yes, I live near Florence in the center of Italy. So it's very exciting to be with you today.
In Mexico City, and we're very excited to have you here. And as we say, traditionally, without any further ado, let this start. Go ahead, Sarah.
Okay, so let's share the presentation. Here we go. Let's make sure everybody can see it. Okay, so we're talking about a very special day in students' life, which is the exam day. And what we want to talk about is being ready for that amazingly important day, the exam day. So what we're going to be doing is in this session, looking at ways to be ready for that big day, and also talking to learners about their questions and making sure that they are in the best position they can be to perform well on that exam day. It's a very important day, and I think it's thinking about it, talking about it with learners and answering their questions will make a difference to how they're able to perform in the exam. So what we hope to do in this session is also give you lots of information and maybe some ideas to explore. And we'll be giving you some references to resources and ideas for you to take away from this. We would also be looking at a very important topic, not just information about the exam or details about the exam, but also looking at our well-being of our learners and looking particularly at mindfulness and how that can help for the exam day. Is there anything I've missed, Rosalia?
No, right you are, and I will come back for mindfulness. So let's get this going.
So it's definitely the most important thing about the exam day, or to help the exam day go well, is the preparation that comes up to that exam day. So we want to talk about that, talking about how teachers can talk about that with learners, giving them some ideas, and really making the difference with that preparation in time for the Cambridge Day. So the motto is be prepared, and if you're prepared, then you're going to be able to do much better because you'll be more confident, more relaxed, more informed, so that on that day you can really do your best as a candidate for the exam. So first thing for the students to do is to start taking control, because part of it is obviously their responsibility as well as the teacher's responsibility to help the students feel as prepared as they possibly can. So one thing is to get them to start to think about it, to discuss it, to share their fears, to share their thoughts, to share their hopes, so that again, it's a really important process that will make a difference to when they get to the exam day. So exam preparation really starts with thinking about what they can do, what's important. So one of the activities we can do with learners is to get them to think about two areas, which is, what do you think it is important to do before the exam, and what it's important to do during the exam? Because of course you've got different moments which can make a difference again to how the students are performing in the exam. And very simply, we can start by thinking about, if you like, a kind of countdown to the exam. And we can get students to talk together and to have some ideas as a class. And one of the things that we can do is discuss what a class can do to prepare for the test or prepare for the exam. So what we can do and what we can do to feel our best on exam day. So getting students to brainstorm this, discuss it together, depending, of course, which level they're at, they'll be able to do it in more detail. It's actually good speaking practice as well, because, of course, they're talking, giving their opinions, they're sharing their ideas, they're discussing practical ideas as well. So what can we do to prepare? And, of course, we can get them to have a few ideas about that.
And Sarah,
Yeah.
even if they cannot do it in English, they can do it in the language they use at home. So in the case of Mexico, mostly Spanish, and it will also be important.
Absolutely, because it's that mental preparation, as you're going to talk about later as well, is very, very important. So yes, if they can do it in English, then it's an opportunity to do some speaking practice. But the important thing is that they talk about it and that they think about those things that they can do, that they have control of, that can make a difference to how they are when they get to exam day. So once we talked about it as a group, the idea would be that students would think about it for themselves individually and giving themselves, if you like, an action plan for things like, these very simple ones that you can see on the screen, checking the tasks. What do I need to do for each one? Have I thought about each different paper? Have I thought about each different task? And maybe this is a moment in the preparation is to think about, okay, this one I found a bit more difficult. Maybe I need to do a little bit more work on it so that I can be more confident. And of course, there are practical things, and we're going to be talking about other useful practical ideas to help the kind of feeling best. And of course, there are simple things like going to bed early and not studying all night or trying to cram. As we know, when you learn English, you can't really do it all at the last minute. Maybe if you're doing a history test, students try and remember dates at the last minute. But of course, that's not how you do your English test. It's a process that we've been doing over the time of the course. And of course, we need to kind of get ready for that special day. So, tips for success. Now, I wonder if you would like to write in the chat your 3 top tips for success that you tell your students are going to make a difference for the exam day. Let's see what you think. It's your chance, because we can't talk to you. At least you can take part in the chat. So, for example, knowing the exam format might be one of them. Can you think of 3 other ideas and share them in the chat? So let's see what we come up with, Rosalia. What do you think? Can you see the chat?
I can see the chat. We have very shy people, but they've just finished a school day, so it might be because of that. But
we don't mind.
We don't mind, exactly. I mean, reading instructions, very good.
There we go.
Do several exercises for analysis. Okay. So we think we have very young learners, and we have teenagers as well, right? Young adults. Timing, so important, really crucial. Okay. But very practical things as well, right, Sarah? Like, for
Absolutely.
example, what have we got for 2 to 4 to 5?
Lovely. Fantastic. No, it's great. And of course, these things are not new. It's just very useful to kind of remind ourselves and, of course, help learners. So things like practicing using sample papers so they know what to expect. Improving all skills. That's a kind of tip for success. Not just thinking about your grammar or just practicing writing, but making sure that you're practicing all the skills for the exam, because of course the exam is going to test all your skills. Thinking about vocabulary. Now, vocabulary is an ongoing thing that, of course, students can do every day. Just a little bit of vocabulary, whether that's revising the vocabulary that they've done in their course book or the work that they've been doing with the teacher. But trying to build their vocabulary every day is a kind of good habit. And of course, timing yourself. So you talked about timing before, Rosalia, but of course, getting students to be aware of the time so that on exam day, they have an idea of how long it's going to take them to do different parts of the test. Of course, it seems logical, but many students don't think about it until it's too late.
Right, and Sarah, there's a lovely
yeah.
one here, which is not a life or death situation, and that's so important.
Lovely.
Yes.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. And I suppose, again, trying to listen to English every day or read something in English every day, getting into those good habits so that when, obviously building up to the exam day, but these are obviously tips for success. And I know we're going to focus mainly on the practical elements of the exam day, but some of these are things that we can do on the journey towards the exam day. Of course, speaking is important. Often students don't have a lot of opportunity. So taking, whenever they have a chance, to speak as much as possible, however that might be. And of course, accepting that you can learn from your mistakes. And of course, that's a very good thing to be doing. Now, we're going to be talking about this later, but of course, one of the most important things of being successful is staying calm and trying to be confident. And we'll look at nice, practical ways to help that part of our psychology to be at our best. And then, of course, resting and eating well. We all know that's what you should do, but do we do it? And encouraging students to be aware of the difference. So, as a result of this, maybe we can ask students to, from that discussion, from some of those ideas, actually to create a classroom poster, the kind of process of thinking about those tips and actually, for example, writing them in maybe in a chart like this before the exam, some of the things that we can do, and then during the exam. I love this one. Don't rush and plan your time. Check your work. And if you get stuck, really important, keep going. And if you're not sure, we all know that sometimes it's better to put an answer than not put an answer, because Cambridge doesn't have negative marking and won't take anything away. If you guess an answer, it's better than to leave it blank. And then, of course, we can make a nice, colourful poster. This is just a simple example, but of course, that will be a really useful process and reminder in the classroom. Also, the other thing, of course, is to think about the weeks running up to the exam and having a kind of study plan of some kind. Maybe your students have done a mock test. Maybe you are able to get them to think about the areas that you've recommended that they work on. Maybe you've given them some feedback about the areas that it would be good for them to work on, and they can use it in their study plan. And then obviously, depending on their age and their level, they might be writing this in English, they might be writing it in their own language, but actually thinking consciously about using the weeks before the exam to work on those things that will then help them be more confident when they get to exam day. So this is something you can download. It's a little study plan template, and again, it will be giving you those resources. So, as I said at the beginning, getting your students to take some control and being conscious of things that can make a difference. And one of the most simple things is actually checking the exam date and time. Seems obvious, but depends on your age, whether that's something you do automatically, on your mindset. But it's something obviously we can encourage all students to be doing, is really checking the time of the exam. And of course, they're going to be checking that with the exam centre or with the school, depending on the students, but double checking the time. And also really things like, stop clicking. So let's see why that's doing that. Okay, so finding out the dates for the speaking exam, particularly because that may not be on the same day as the other components. So it's something obviously to check. You don't want to miss your speaking exam because you weren't paying attention to the date and, of course, the time. And also, just remembering or reminding them, depending on your school or on your exam centre, that they may not be on the same day. They might be, but they may not be. And of course, arriving early helps your stress level. So if you're arriving at the last minute, it's going to be, I've got this extra stress. I'm not going to perform well. So it's always better to arrive ahead of the time kind of recommended. And I was talking to Rosalia about this earlier. We thought about half an hour early is kind of a good practice. What did you say, Rosalia?
I would say so, and especially because when you live in a city, there can be traffic challenges. There can be rain, so that changes absolutely everything. And you want to make sure it better. My dad used to say, better to be an hour earlier than 1 minute late. So maybe not an hour earlier, but that's why we say try and be there 30 minutes, right? So very important when you're talking to families, right? Especially in the case of young learners, that you make sure that they understand, right?
Yeah.
Because it will be possible in some cases, if traffic is not going to be an excuse, Sarah.
No.
We know that.
And if you're late,
I'm going to give you more time because
No.
you said, traffic, right? So take that into account.
And of course, it just makes the student feel more tense if they're, I'm not going to arrive on time. And it's psychologically not a good place to be. So if we can avoid that extra tension, then being 10 minutes early is better than, as you say, being 1 minute late. It really makes a difference psychologically. Of course, there are things to remember to bring, and there are things that you can't bring. And so, again, checking that kind of information. Now, obviously, you need to be able to show your identity. Obviously, if younger students will be using their school credentials. But again, it's something to be thinking about and something to be checking with the exam centre. What do I need to bring to show my identity? And maybe, again, it depends on the age, depends on the school, but it's something to check. Would you say, Rosalia?
Yes, and in the case of all candidates who are underage, the school credential will do, right? That will be just fine. It's especially when it's adult candidates, right? That we say something more official, like we have the credencial de lector, el INE, etc., or even a passport, etc. But young learners, it's the school credential will do.
Yeah, absolutely. But something to be thinking about. Also, thinking about the equipment you're going to need to use. Obviously, if you're doing a digital exam, then the computer will be there. But if you're doing the paper-based exam, you might need to be thinking about your pencil, your pen, which should be black or dark blue, a rubber maybe, and maybe a pencil sharpener. But of course, again, as I said, if you're doing the digital exam, then you're going to be using a keyboard. You might want to write notes, so you might bring a pen to write some notes on a piece of paper, which you'll have to leave in the exam room, but you can do that. And of course, you can bring water. Tip, don't bring anything that has any English words on it. So if you have a beautiful water bottle with lots of English words, no, you need to bring something without any English words. Also, if thinking about your clothes, interestingly, sometimes think, I'm going to wear my T-shirt with all these English words on. No, don't wear anything with English words on, and don't anything that has English words on. That's a tip as well.
We were saying that people who have been doing this for many years may think, but why is there a water bottle there? We were always told it has to be a transparent, etc. sustainability, right? We've only got one world, but we need talk to your center, right? Make sure that you understand the instructions, that everybody is on the same page, as it
Yeah.
were.
Because
Okay.
you
But
might
it's
be
very
requested to, you're right, you might be requested to bring a bottle without a label, which is transparent, so they can just check it's water that you're bringing, not anything else.
exactly. And in the case of people with medical needs,
Yeah,
remember things, special considerations can happen, but you need to let the center know well in advance. Okay.
exactly. So if you do need to bring medication, then it has to be approved by the exam centre before the. Don't do it on the exam day, before the exam day, so that you don't have any problem or any stress. So that goes with if you have learners who need to bring medication, just make sure the exam centre is aware of it. Now, this is really important because, of course, you can't bring with you any digital devices. So no phones, no watches, and that means no traditional watch or any kind of digital watch. Also, because now it's actually quite difficult to tell whether it's a digital watch or a real watch. But basically, no watches and no devices. If you bring them, you'll have to leave them in a special place, but you can't have them with you. So don't bring your expensive watch and then be worried about the fact that you can't keep it with you. So that's also a tip for teachers to make sure students know. Now they say, well, how am I going to know the time? Well, if you're doing the digital exam, then you will have the clock on the screen and you'll be able to see it. If you're doing a paper-based exam, then the exam centre will make sure that you're able to see a clock during the exam. So very, very important. Leave these things at home or leave it with your parents if they're children before they go into the exam room. So
Exactly. And also, not the time to bring your course book, right? I don't know why, Sarah, this is a very Mexican thing, right? Like candidates take their course books. They won't have enough time to do anything with the course book. So that's a big no as well.
yes, absolutely. It's too late by then. So leave it at home. So, and then of course, it's back to thinking about managing the time. So we talked about the importance of arriving early. Also, making sure that students are really, really conscious of how long each paper is. And obviously, if it's paper-based or digital, there is a difference because, of course, in the paper-based exam, you have to transfer your answers to the answer sheet. And for example, in the reading and use of English, so that we're looking at B2 and C1, C2, then of course there's no extra time to make that transfer. If you're doing the writing paper, obviously there are two tasks, and of course they're both important. So make sure that students are using their time well when they're doing the writing tasks. And when they're doing the listening, if they're doing paper-based, they will actually have extra time to make the transfer. But again, it's limited. They need to keep watching the clock. So these kind of things awareness of time management is so important, and practicing it before exam day can make that big difference. So, what about the information? Well, of course, the handbooks are available to download, and we just have the QR codes here, but I think the references will be sent after the session. And you'll be able to download all the information you need about everything about the exam. And this is really, I'm just showing you to remind you, but it's something to do with students, of course, is get them to think about each part of the exam. So in A2 Key, they're doing reading and writing together. How long is it? How are they going to use their time? Listening, speaking, etc., etc. And you will find this information in the handbooks, and it's just good to remind students and get them to be very conscious that they have this time, and if they manage the time, then of course they'll be less stressed, and the invigilator won't be saying, "Oh, you've got 5 minutes," and they're still not using their time well. So it's something really to talk about.
And just to remind people, Sarah,
yeah,
the handbooks are available online. Anybody can download them. Handbooks are not really for our students, not for our learners.
No,
they are for you, for me, for us to learn important things, etc. to have as a reference to see how things have developed, changed, etc. But never, never for our candidates, never
In
for our
fact,
learners.
you're absolutely right, Rosalie. In fact, they're called Handbook for Teachers because it's really to guide the teachers in the information that you're going to give to the learners. And we've got some other material that you could suggest your learners get. But obviously, for each part of the exam, and we're not going to talk about each one now, but you will get information in the handbook about each part. It will remind you of what you have to do in each part. And of course, with each one of those, there are tips for preparation, but also tips for exam day. So we can see in the handbook an example of what it looks like if you're doing the digital format. And here you can see, of course, you're going to click and choose, and the set in reading and use of English. And then, of course, so that's the digital version. And then, of course, we've got also in the handbook, you can see the paper-based version of the same question. So part 1 here in reading and use of English for B2 for school. So again, you can see how it works, and you can see how the students have to answer on a separate answer sheet and how they have to colour in the lozenge and choose the correct answer. So it's very important that students are aware what they have to do. So again,
Sarah,
sorry?
just a reminder here, some of our colleagues are hearing about, because we said we will mention things that are for what we used to call the paper-based exams, and the other ones for computer-based or digital Cambridge English qualifications. If you're still doing PB exams, paper-based, that's perfectly okay. But if you would like to explore the digital option, please talk to your centre, maybe for your next school year.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And the choice is there. So it's whatever best for your students and your school. But what I just wanted to mention is that the handbook gives you both, so you can see both. And there are also tips on for guiding, particularly for paper-based, where obviously you have to manage the time a little bit differently. And also whether you're writing in a pen or whether you're writing in a pencil. And so again, this information is available in the handbook, and it's very important that students know. So for example, in the reading and use of English, they have to use a pencil because it's obviously going to be used as part of the computer marking, which will recognize the pencil. So those kind of tips are available, and very important that students know about that. So again, I've just taken it from the handbook, but you will find information about completing the digital test. And you will also, and things like, suggestions for making sure that they practice on a digital platform, and that they have, can see that actually as they go through the digital exam at the bottom, they can actually see the number of the question and where they are in the paper. So they can actually use that for help them indicate, how many questions they haven't answered yet, and keep their eyes on the time. And this is the same thing in the handbook, but again, for the paper-based test, lots of information there, so I made it a bit bigger. Things like all answers must go on an answer sheet, very important. They can't say, well, I didn't transfer it. You have to transfer it to the answer sheet. Very important. That's absolutely. And again, depending on which paper they are doing, whether they're writing in pencil or writing in pen. There are lots of tips, things like reminding students that handwriting should be clear so that it can be read by markers. So things like that. Very practical tips. And we can see here another tip about practicing completing the answer sheet, and you can find a copy of the answer sheet in the handbook for teachers. So if you wanted to show them what the answer sheet looks like, then obviously you can do that either on screen, or if you here's an example. So we can see the reading and use of English, the candidate name and number will be printed, but the other information they have to complete. So we have also for all the exams there, that you'd have a reading and use of English paper. We have in writing, it's slightly different depending on the level. Again, you can see the different parts of the exam and where they have to write. So for them, students, it's a very good idea to practice writing on the answer sheet so they can see the size of their writing, how many words they're writing, so they're not spending their time counting the words, because as we know, it's an approximate number of words. So those kind of things can help with practicing on the answer sheets. And here we can see, the answer sheets for B1, B2, and C1 are slightly different. And again, here they write in pen. So again, which paper is it? Do I write in pencil? Do I write in pen? Make sure your students know the answer to that question. And of course, they can have extra paper to make notes, but not to actually write their answers. It has to be in the question booklet. So that's also important. And you can see here they have to write the number of their questions. So making this kind of familiar, again, reduces the stress. They know what to do, where they have to write. Are they writing in pencil? Are they writing in pen? So they're not getting stressed about that. It's something they can be. Maybe Rosalie wants to add something to that.
Just that you have to remind your learners that they have to take their pencil and or pen. There will be extra ones because we know maybe you're using a pen and he decides to die in that same day, right, Sarah?
Absolutely.
Right? But not depend on the center to provide pencils or pens for absolutely everyone, right? That's something that your learners have to take from home. So make sure you especially in the case of young learners, you let families know, right? That they should be taking care of that.
Yeah,
our
absolutely.
centers are wonderful, but
yes, and of course with young learners, they have to take their coloured pencils as well, so that's important.
Exactly. So let's be prepared.
Now, another thing that students often don't think about is the end of the test. And actually, the end of the test is a very important moment. How you behave at the end of the test it needs to be quite disciplined, because obviously there are rules. So in the paper-based tests, obviously they will be told to stop writing, and they must stop writing when they're told. They can't say, I'm just finishing. No. When the time is over, you stop. And if they haven't finished, they have to put their pen down. Otherwise, they will get into trouble, and that's obviously not what we want. And again, they finish and they want to just get up and leave the room. No, you have to wait until you're told. So these kind of let's say rules are very important. The students know this is going to happen. You're going to have to sit and wait. You're not going to be able to rush out and get your mobile phone. You have to wait, and you can obviously eat in a break, but you can't eat in the exam room unless there's a medical reason for it. For the digital exam at the end of the test, similar thing. If you've used papers for notes, you have to leave it on the desk. Again, you're sitting until you're told you can leave the room. If you have any questions or problems, not about the actual questions in the exam, of course, but if you've had a problem, then you would tell somebody from the exam centre. But not about the actual questions, of course. They can't speak to you about that. And again, same thing, remind them that they will not be able to get access to their mobile phones during the breaks. It will be at the end of the exam. So, last minute questions. Teacher. The big day is coming, and they often ask you questions. So, we need to encourage them to actually ask some last minute questions, because then we can avoid some of the trauma on the day. So, what kind of last minute questions do students often ask, I wonder? Well, I've just got a few here as I see time ticking away. So you might get questions like this. Are words like doesn't and isn't counted as one or two words? Panic. Suddenly remember to ask that question.
Question, yeah.
Yeah, and this one, what if I don't understand the words in the text? What happens if I need more paper? These kind of panic questions. What if I write too much or don't write enough? So encourage them to ask you these questions so that when they go to the exam, they don't have the issue. How important is spelling? Well, we need to talk about that in our preparation. Can I wear headphones? Speaking. What if my partner is better at me than speaking? What happens? And can my teacher be my examiner? Well, I'm not going to answer those questions for you straight away, because you can actually find all the answers to these and many more, let's say, typical questions that students ask in these amazing booklets for candidates. Rosalie was saying that the handbooks are for teachers. Well, these are designed for candidates, and obviously they're written with candidates in mind, and it's something they can download or have a look at on the internet. And obviously for teachers, it gives you the answers to some of these questions, a kind of official answer. And one of the things you can do is use the information booklet to actually create an activity. And this kind of activity might be something like using Kahoot. It doesn't have to be
And
Kahoot,
just to
but
say,
yeah,
we're not going to have a Kahoot, a live Kahoot right here now. So
no.
this is like mock Kahoot.
So this is a mock Kahoot because we didn't want to risk the time, and also the time we had available. So we're going to pretend to play, and what we've done is create some questions based on the information for students. So these are taken from there, and you would get your students. So here we go. Would you say A or B is the answer for this question? And you can write it in the chat, and we'll just see how many people can do that. So imagine it's Kahoot. You can hear the music. Tick, tick, tick. Do you remember how the music goes, Rosalie?
Yes. 29 answers so far.
That's great. Fantastic. So, of course, 2 words. They counted it as 2 words. So one of those stickly questions. Here's another one. What if I don't understand all the words in the text? What do I need to do? Phone a friend, check your dictionary, or... And of course, we know that we're encouraging them. But again, it's a nice way to get them to be thinking about these questions and give them the answers in a fun way. What happens if I need more paper? Well, there we go. Is it A or B? And of course, we've got lots of people saying A. And of course, you can have paper in the exam room, but you can't take it out. And of course...
Can we just say, we're saying Kahoot, Sarah, because we know everybody loves Kahoots, right? And isn't this a great way to encourage our learners to really pay more attention to what to expect on the day of the exam? We've said it before, there should be no surprises. The day of the exam should be an experience, right? As positive experience as possible. No surprises.
Exactly.
There's no room for surprises, right? So having a Kahoot, a great idea.
So you can create it, obviously, thinking of your own learners in mind. And of course, here, a very important thing, of course, you can't have your teacher as your examiner. So if obviously the examiners check the lists before the exams, and of course, they're not going to be examining their students. Listening is an interesting one because, of course, we're talking about computer-based or digital and paper-based. And so in both cases, if you're doing the digital one, you will be wearing headphones. If you're doing the paper-based, you need to check with your exam center. So that hasn't changed. Anyway, that's a fun way to do the look at those information for students. But if you don't want to do a Kahoot, then you might just create a quiz using the candidate information booklet. So this is a page where I took those questions from, and you can see you've got the answers. So you as a teacher have access to those answers. You can create your worksheet, get your students to work in pairs. And then, of course, it's an opportunity to get them to do some reading practice and discussion and questions about the exam. So a fun way to give some very important information. And of course, we do some reading practice at the same time. So it's good because unanswered questions can cause learner anxiety on the day. If we use the information for students, then we know that the information we're giving is correct. And that's very important. If you don't know the answer, it's better not to give an answer. If you're not sure, then obviously checking in the information for candidate booklet means that everybody is on the same page and has the correct information. And if you're really still uncertain, ask your exam center. So of course, the other idea of this is to get your students to ask more questions about the exam so that they feel more relaxed on exam day. And of course, if they're doing it in English, if they can, then they're practicing their language skills as well. So a few references for you before I finish, pass over to Rosalia, is on the website, there is this video which is new, and there are some tips in the video for exam day. So what to expect on exam day. You can see that on this page it has information about paper-based exams, digital exams, and also the speaking tests. So we can also encourage our students to use digital resources like the practice tests to help them be familiar. Very important is get your students to register for the results service for candidates, because when they get their confirmation email that they've registered, that means if they register for the results, that as soon as the results are released, they can go onto the internet, look at the results service, and see their results as soon as they're available. We talked about making sure that the students understand the exam schedule, what time, and they've read the instructions. Also talk to them about the ID checks. Depending on the level, they may have extra identity checks. They may have to have their photo taken. So again, make sure that they know about that. Tell them that, of course, they won't be allowed to take any personal items into the exam room or exam hall. The other thing is that we talked about the arrival time, thinking about the route. Quite rightly, Rosalia pointed out the issues that you have. We don't want to have that. Thinking about what you're going to wear. I mentioned not wearing clothes with English words, but also being comfortable, not trying to be extra smart. It's important to be comfortable for the exam. And also, if it's hot or cold, you need to be able to react to that by different layers of clothing.
Sarah,
yes.
by the way, in the case of young learners, and we're talking about primary school learners, lower secondary school learners, chances are probably they're going to be wearing their school uniform, unless it's a Saturday, right? Usually on Saturday, you don't have to, but this is something that you talk to with your center, right? Your centers, your approved Cambridge centers, are really your best friends and your go-to. They should be your first option, right? So always, always, always talk to them. Okay?
And of course, if they're wearing their school uniform, they're used to wearing their school uniform, and it feels kind of normal, which is great. Also, ask for help at the centre. If you have any issue, obviously they're not going to tell the students, they will not be able to ask about, what does this word mean, or how do I spell this? Of course, they're not going to answer that kind of question. However, if they needed to go to the bathroom, or if they had some issue, then of course they should always put up their hand and ask for assistance. So, going back to the website, you can find all the information that we've been giving you about the difference between on the day for digital exams and on the day for paper-based exams. So lots of information available, so teachers can be fully informed, able to answer their students' question, help them really be prepared and ready for that exam day. But that leaves a very important part. I mean, so far we've been looking at getting ready for the big day, looking at learner questions and some resources. But one thing we haven't talked about is mindfulness. So over to you, Rosalia.
I know. And just to remind everybody, exam preparation journey, that's where you go, so that you can have access to everything. Somebody has added a link to the specific handbook for Cambridge B2 First, but we have handbooks for the young learners and for each one of the Cambridge English qualifications. You go to the exam preparation journey, Sarah, and that's where you find, we've curated those resources for you, although don't worry, Sarah has very kindly offered to have a list of the specific resources we've mentioned here. So you will be getting that when you get, thank you for coming to this Success Academy webinar today with us. So mindfulness, why are we talking about mindfulness? And if things are working properly here, I can control now. So let's see if that is true, Sarah.
Yes, it is.
Right. And you will notice Sarah and I have talked about these well-being and mindfulness, right? And it was about talking about the weather, for example. If there's a storm, there's nothing we can do about the storm, right? But what we can do is something with ourselves, and that is we wait for the storm to finish, right? And in the meantime, we go in and out because we can breathe and is still free, which is amazing. Right. So let's take advantage of that. All right. So let's go on. This is funny. Okay. You see, it happens. I can see where I am now. Okay. So mindfulness at Cambridge. We thought it would be interesting for you to learn. We think about mindfulness at the University of Cambridge very, very carefully because we have seen how it can help and how it can benefit our learners. Yes, we're talking about university learners, but still, it's talking about how something that can be really useful for any person, right? And we talk about here, it's totally secular, has nothing to do with religion, nothing to do with anything other than improving well-being. Because the better you feel, then the more prepared you are for something like an exam day, right? So let's see what we can talk about when we talk about mindfulness. All right, come on, Zoom. All right, so we say it's not moving, is it? Okay, don't worry, Sarah. I will make this work. I'm here where we should start moving. And there are different ways. Come on.
If it doesn't move, I'll do it for you.
Okay, let
Shall
us
I do
try
it?
again. I think so.
Okay, I'll click for you.
Might as well, right?
Okay,
Sorry,
so I'm taking it back. And
yes, no,
there
go
you go.
ahead. So benefits, right? It's good for our body and our mind. Okay. When we are stressed, we're not thinking clearly. So mindfulness can help us get back to a relaxed state. That's very useful. Being alert is not the same as being stressed. Okay. So being alert, that's a good thing. Because as Sarah said, we have to be conscious of time, right? Because there is a time limit for the different papers, etc., right? And it will help us all the time. It will help us feel more confident. And this is something that we should start doing way before exam day, Sarah, right? Let's go on. So we're talking about mindfulness. And if you go to our wonderful Cambridge Dictionary online, you see here, it's about creating a feeling of being calm. You said calm, cool, and collected, right? I'm in charge of this, right? I cannot do anything about the storm. I can do things about myself. I can try and get better. So let's go on to the next one. All right. So mindfulness, if you try, Sarah, to find a word, and I think it might be the same case for Italian. If you try to find just one word to translate mindfulness, chances are you're not going to get it easily or quickly, at least. Even if you go to whatever, Copilot, ChatGPT, you name it, you're not going to find just one word, right? But it's about being here and now. You don't worry about what has happened, what might happen in the future. It's here. This is the time. This is the place, right? So you are feeling the present, and you can leave the present, right? So you're paying attention to one thing and one thing only, and that has to do with being fine, okay? So we engage in that, right? It's some people would say when you're in the zone, you feel that you are in a good place, right? And we can take our senses back and really control them, all right? So let's go on, because we're going to see what about mindfulness? Is it something, like I said, This has nothing to do with religion, has nothing to do with cults, etc. In fact, I've added here, Sarah, some of the names of the countries where mindfulness is being taken so seriously. It now is something that has to be done for educational institutions through the educators themselves, colleagues, teachers, etc. Families get to know about it, right? In the case of, for example, university students, they get to see what they can do themselves, etc. But in the case of primary schools, lower secondary schools, they will receive information and very basic ideas, okay? So let's see if we can do some of these things. I think we can, because there is a place for mindfulness, first of all, for ourselves, Sarah. That is a very important thing. I used to say to my students when they were getting ready for an exam, I remember one particular group, they were getting ready to take Cambridge B2 first. And one of my learners said, Rosalia, maybe you don't understand, but I'm really nervous about it. And I say, okay, try and say excited, because that's more positive, right? I say, but I feel I'm taking the exam and I worry about it sometimes. And I say, okay, you worry about yourself. I worry about each and every one of you taking the exam. So let's breathe, right? So next, what can we do? What can we do and how can we help our learners, Sarah? Let's go on to the next one. All right. So be here and now. This is, as I said, don't worry about what you have already done or what you didn't do. Don't worry about what you will be doing. This is now. This is you, present, right? And the world around you, right? What are you thinking? And sometimes it's okay. We let our thoughts go away sometimes, right? How are we feeling? It's okay to say, I'm feeling a bit nervous, right? I'm feeling a bit tense, etc. That's okay. It's okay to acknowledge. I've always said, in the case of young learners, very good to have things like these, different colors. So if they are feeling okay, you can see that it's green, right? That's okay. If they are feeling sometimes okay, sometimes not so okay, or if they're feeling particularly tense, right? And you can have them do something like this in the classroom to talk about their feelings, and they say, it's a ride. It's okay to feel like that. Okay. Next one, Sarah. So some activities you may want to explore. Let's see what we have here. This is, look at that beautiful island. It's a very small island. This island is yours. I'm giving it to you. Okay. You can name it. You can do whatever you want. So this is something you can do with your learners. Okay. Can you see this island? Okay. Now close your eyes. I believe you. I trust you. So close your eyes. Come on, Sarah, close your eyes. And now you're going to remember your island. You don't have to tell me, but this is what you do. You go back to your island because everything is perfect in your island, right? What can you see? What colors can you see? This beautiful island. What sounds can you hear? Think about the smells, right? Because there are trees. If there are animals, what can you smell, right? What can you touch that is safe? You're not going to touch anything that might hurt you, right? So when you think about your beautiful island, how do you feel? And because it's a beautiful island, you can open your eyes now. It should be something positive, right? Let's go on, right? So very clearly, you can see it's about reading. Something like we were talking about the last days before the exam, Sarah, right? And sometimes we think we have no more things to do. No, talking about speaking and not being afraid to say things in English and making sure that English sounds more and more natural all the time. Things like tongue twister, and we don't have time to do the tongue twister, but anything, you just go and look for tongue twisters in English, right? Google tongue twisters in English. and you can have things like that. And you can have a 3-minute competition in the classroom. I know what fun it can be, right? Not for the day of the exam. This is before the exam, okay? Let's go on because we're coming to the end and I have important information about celebrating success,
Oh,
Sarah, okay?
it just decided to go. It decided to go mad. Right, okay, there we go.
Okay.
So there we go.
This PowerPoint hasn't been doing mindfulness, okay? So you can say, do something that will take you to a different level and forget about things except what you're doing right now. So for example, I'm right-handed, so I use my right hand to write. So I could show my learners, right? But now I'm going to use my left hand and see if I can write Rosalia, right? I know what fun that can be, and it can take us to a different place where the only important thing is to see whether we can manage to use the hand that we don't usually use, right? That simple. Let's go on, Sarah, right? So, so I will tell you the name in the next, yes, you can see it's an article by Kate, and she talks about 3 tips for teachers, all right? So if we go through it, Sarah, we will see the 3 things I believe that she mentions, right? So, like we did with the island, this is now looking at the room, looking for things, focusing on colors, right? Or for things that you can feel, things like that. This world of better learning really is a universe of better learning with lots of useful things, right? So we go on to the next one because I believe, right? And 3 things that you can hear, right? So right now, for example, I could tell you, my husband is downstairs and I can see that he's listening to music, right? We have a dog at home, so I can hear, actually, I cannot see her, but I can hear Kira barking. Makes lovely coffee, so I think I can get a little bit of that wonderful coffee smell. Okay, so let's go on because we're about to say thank you. And before we ask you if you have any questions, please let me go to the next one, Sarah, because there are 2 very important things. This is Success Academy, as you know, Sarah. So we have here lots of colleagues who are doing the Celebrating Success campaign. And they are waiting to hear a word. And I'm not a magician, I'm not a mind reader, but I can guarantee that they're thinking about the word journal, right? So let's go on to the next one, because important dates. Right. Here we have, Sarah, I've told you about this before. We have colleagues from 3 different contexts. We have colleagues from general preparation centers. We love you. We also have colleagues from our lovely Cambridge English schools. We also love you. And we have lovely colleagues who also work with UNOI, okay? All those 3 different contexts, lovely contexts. They know that they have to submit their journal by the deadline, and the deadline is June the 30th, okay? Please, please don't wait until that day. Try and send it at least a day before, okay? What's going to happen? Then in July, we're going to review all the journals, right? Because come August, September, the winners will be announced, Sarah. Winners will be going to, it will be an
amazing.
English
Sounds fantastic.
Will be going to Cambridge, right? And will be taking his or her coordinator, right? To say thank you for your support. Well, I did Celebrating Success, right? We'll also have a beautiful award ceremony here in Mexico City. But the big thing, of course, will be the trip to Cambridge. So let's go on to the next one, right? So, UNOI, I have to ask you, colleagues, please to be patient. just contact your coaches, right? But for preparation centers, that's your QR code. Please remember, you can only submit once. So beware. If you see that submit button, you click on it, that's it. No more chances, okay? There's nothing we can do about it. Cambridge English Schools, there is a QR code there for you. Don't worry, if you have colleagues who are not here today, they will get these as well, right? Preparation centers, please, you will be contacting your center, right? Cambridge English Schools, you will be contacting Sophie. And for our Uno E colleagues, don't worry, you will be contacting your coaches and they will be sharing the information with you, okay? But please, 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 if there is one thing you have to remember is you click on the button that says submit, that's it. You have submitted. So don't try it after the first thing that you have to do. You know, you have to do one thing. By the way, there's only one other Success Academy webinar, Sarah, where we will be talking about results and celebrating, right? So let's go to the next one, because this is where you